graduation. I just graduated last June, and the transition into adulthood was a struggle. And the stress from I needed to convey that energy somewhere. I needed to express how hard it was. So I turned to comics. I started drawing what was stressing me out, such as moving to a new apartment, trying to find a job, and all of that. And eventually I realized that making these comics started to make me feel better. Not only was it giving me a platform to share what I'm experiencing, it also became a coping mechanism where I'm like, oh, well, I can share these feelings and realize that other people feel the same way. And I sort of started seeing it as therapy that I can actually afford.
You don't have to pay for this type of therapy.
Exactly. I just draw.
All right, so you started this series of comics on adulting, but now it's really developed into something quite different and more focused. So if you guys want to check out Clar's artwork, Clara has a main Instagram that you guys can look at for all of her work because she does more than just comics. But also, you just recently started an Instagram that is specifically for these comics. And I think you said that you are posting these once a week now?
Hmm.
Okay. And by the way, I feel like what I like about these comics is that Clark's really talking about a lot of things that we all think, but never say out loud, right? And we actually had a stream a little ways back about artists and mental health. Again, a topic that I think a lot of us spend time thinking about, but never talk about publicly. And so for you, Clar, these comics have really been almost like an outlet for really trying to be healthy and take care of yourself in a lot of ways. So I'm going to show you guys more comics by Clar. Ooh, we got a lot of activity in the chat. Hello, 10,000 Crows, Sea Coast, Elsa Grace, and Nina. Thanks for jumping in, guys. And I'd love for you guys to look at Clar's work and tell us what you think of it. Tell us if you find it relatable, if it's different, if it's the same as some of the thoughts that you're having. Clark, can you tell us a little bit about your process for making these comics?
Right. Since these comics sort of focus on my mental health, it sort of became like a diary. So I would just think about, okay, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? It sort of like what would I write in a diary, but instead of that, make it into funny drawings. Um, so yeah, basically it starts out with me just randomly doodling, writing down things I feel, things I find annoying, and I use humor as a way of coping. So as I write it down, it becomes funny, and I'm like, this could be a funny comic strip. And then I would start sketching it into real panels, start to figure out composition, dialogue, and eventually it becomes like the final line art, which I then color, and then it becomes the final comic.
So, do you use digital media and traditional media for these, or is this 100% digital, these comics?
These are 100% digital since I never know when I'm gonna get like an idea for a specific comic. So I would work on them on my iPad, which I bring everywhere. So it's like an on-the-go thing. Sometimes I'm having lunch and then something triggers me, and then I'm like, oh, this is good. And then I would take out the iPad and start
So,
sketching.
you're really almost working on these comics all the time.
Yeah, basically, I see in panels now.
That's great. I just love that so much because I think a lot of artists think that, okay, I got to really carve out a big chunk of time to sit down in the studio and make the work. But I love this idea of just jotting down a quick little thing. The iPad is super convenient, and so you can do it wherever you want. I know you spend a lot of time working in cafes and stuff like that. So there is really something to be said about how convenient that is. We've got a comment in the chat. Ray Mayo is saying adulting can take a lifetime. Plenty more episodes. Loving this so far. Well, what I think is very funny, as somebody who's like, what, double your age now? I can't believe this. But when I got out of school, we didn't have the word adulting. We just suffered in silence and never really said anything about what was going on in our heads. But I tell a lot of students, look, that transition from college into the quote real world, I mean, that's one of the biggest transitions you will ever have in your life. And it's not a small thing. It's a lot to take in a lot of the time. All right, so this comic we're looking at, this one's called Take a Break. And this is the one that I think really, the concept of the inner voice really became a lot more concrete. So we have this one here. Your inner voice is telling you, suck it up, don't be a baby, you don't have time for a break. And you poor thing, you're just begging for the inner voice to stop bothering you. And so tell us about your inner voice. How did that start?
Um, so yeah, I've always had like an annoying voice inside myself, as I'm sure like everyone has, but it just like gets in the way of me enjoying things whenever I start to like feel good. They're like, nope, don't feel good. You don't deserve that. Look at all these things you haven't done. So all the like anxiety, depression, all the bad feelings, it becomes this entity that just, brings me down all the time. And only recently that I realized that that's not healthy. So, so that's when I started making the comics, where I decided to use the comics as a medium to try to acknowledge the voice and try to figure out ways to, if not like shut it up, just try to control it a little, try to like quiet down. And
Let's see, Juliana M is asking in the chat how many artworks. I'm guessing, Juliana, you're asking how many to do for the art dare. For the art dare, we only require that you do one. And I know that we're showing all of you comics, but you can interpret your inner voice however you want. So if you guys want to do an acrylic painting and it's some surreal image of your inner voice, if you want to shoot photographs that are your inner voice, really anything is up for grabs here. I mean, I think one of the advantages of the comic panel is that you can incorporate the text. That's not to say you can't put text into a painting, but of course, in a comic format, it makes a little bit more sense. But Clara, I was going to show this one, which is called Good Day. And this one is so funny because it has this particular rhythm where everything looks so great. It has this beautiful flow, and we're coming along going, oh, thank goodness, finally, Clara's having this wonderful, positive energy in her life. And it keeps going for several panels. I mean, I love the page here that's about the cooking, about, oh, I went grocery shopping, I did the prep time, everything's ready to go, because I totally have had those days where I'm like, dude, I'm amazing. I thought in advance what I want to eat, and I picked everything up, and I made dinner on time, and then everything's fine until we get to the last panel, and then you explode. You're questioning, oh my goodness, is something bad about to happen? Something's about to happen, I just know it. And for me, I love the visuals of your comic, but the scheming that goes on in your head, the way you write it, I think is really, really wonderful. Okay, so Clara, let's give everybody some tips for how to get started. So, tip number one that we're giving people is to write and sketch everything down. How would you recommend people actually go about doing that?
I think I think the key is to not think too much about it. Like I said before, it's kind of like writing in a diary. So whatever like you feeling at the moment, whatever's like bothering you, write it down or maybe visualize it in some way. Like your frustration, because sometimes I feel like my frustration is like this annoying scribble. So sometimes I'm just scribbling and that becomes like a character in my comics. But yeah, just write literally everything down and eventually ideas will come out of it.
Do you recommend doing a blend of writing and sketching, or do you do better when you separate them, like write down everything and then sketch it, or does it not matter?
Well, it helps for me to do both sketching and writing just because sometimes I have an idea that I don't have the patience to try to create a coherent sketch. So I just write down that idea and then come back to it later when I figure out how I want to visualize it.
Let's see, we got a comment from Seacoast. For clarification, this is February's art dare. The stream description says January 31st. Oops, yes, you're correct. That's what I get for cutting and pasting too much. You are correct. So actually, the last day would be February 29th is the last day to submit to this art dare. Thank you very much. You guys are paying attention way more than I am. I wanted to add to what Clar is saying about writing and sketching everything down. I tell my students when they're brainstorming like that, I want them to quote barf on the paper. Have you ever found that sometimes you can almost think too, well, I'm sure you know, Clark, about thinking too much because we can see from your comics that you obviously think about a lot of things. But what I've seen a lot is when people are writing down ideas for a project, they will critique themselves as they're writing down the ideas. They'll say, oh no, that's a bad idea. Oh, I don't like that one. No, I'm bad. I should start. Just put it down. Anything is game. Sometimes I put down an idea and I think, oh, this sucks. I hate this. And then a half an hour later, I realize, you know, something that actually has potential. So I think a big part of this is just to not filter out anything. Just put it all down, no matter how stupid it sounds. Like you said that one of your core images is a scribble, right? I mean, it doesn't get more simple than that in a lot of ways. Let's see. We've got comments in the chat. Juliana M is saying, is it worldwide? Absolutely, it's worldwide. I think what's super fun about the art dares is that we have people from all over the world submitting. I mean, last art dare, I had people from Australia, from the UK, from Germany, US, and that's super fun that we can all be here together in this space, but we're from so, so far away. Nina is saying, I really loved your comics. Very cool.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, let's move on to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is start talking to your inner voice. So, how do you do this, Clara? Because we know you have a lot of experience with this.
Okay, so at the risk of sounding like a crazy person, it really helps if you just talk to yourself, not as if like it's not like you're talking to another version of yourself. It's more like you're talking as if you're having a conversation with someone else trying to explain how you're feeling. It's kind of like a fake therapist. So
Don't
it's
do
like,
this in public. Do this at home.
yeah, not in public. Public. If you do it in public, make sure you like control your face because sometimes I'm just like mouthing words and then people would stare at me. But yeah, no, mostly just keep it in your head. But sometimes I would just, imagine, okay, I'm feeling bad. And I start talking about how I feel and then imagining there's someone else responding to whatever I'm saying. So there's like a call and response, but I only hear like one side. And I just imagine how people would respond to what I'm saying. And that allows me to process things because I like start to verbalize things. So whatever I'm feeling, it becomes more tangible and I can like understand it better.
Do you literally say it out loud, or is this a conversation you just have in your head?
Nah, it's in my head.
Okay, all right. Because you know what I do actually? I do this in the car when I'm driving by myself. Is if I'm getting ready to give a lecture, I give it in the car, but I actually say it out loud. And I find it very useful to actually use my voice in that way. So I don't know. For me, I would have trouble having it in my head. I feel like I would have to say it out loud or I'd have to write it down or something like that. But I think the point is, all of you who are watching, whatever works. There's no correct way to brainstorm or to come up with these ideas. I think the point is that you spend time thinking about it in advance because what I really like about this art dare that makes it different than our other ones is it really is like a mental challenge. Like you really have to think, what is the subject matter? What am I going to do? And do all of that processing before you actually pick up your pencil to start drawing. Okay, let's move on to tip number 3. Now, we said write a quick script between you and your inner voice. Is that something you tried, or is this just a recommendation you're giving people?
I mean, that's what I do when I actually characterize the inner self in my comics. When I know I want to include a conversation of an inner dialogue of how I usually, in those moments of indecision when I want to take a break, but that part of me won't let me. So I try to sort of break it down into a dialogue that sort of interprets how I feel at that moment, wanting to take a break versus also not letting myself take a break. So it's useful in those scenarios where you really want to make a scene where you actually talk to your inner self.
And I'll tell you guys, because there is a lot of brainstorming and sketching for this project, you can definitely tag us and use hashtag ArtProfDare for your preliminary stuff. Like if you want to put your script and your story, you want to tag us there, you don't have to wait until you've actually done the finished piece. You can show us your brainstorming because I love seeing the brainstorming. I think it's super fun. So feel free to show that to us in a story or in a post. Let's see, Starving Arts Collective, yay, made it to the live stream. Oh, by the way, in case you guys did not see my announcements for the whole month of February, and I'm hoping beyond that as well, all of our streams are going to be at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm hoping that will make it easier for you guys to figure out when we are actually live. Okay, more comments. James McCormack is saying, I'm a fan of your channel, but your lives come at midnight my time. Oh, sorry about that. I know for some people it's like 3 a.m. because you're in like Europe or something like that. Seacoast is saying, deep breath, some advice from someone with DID, find an object, mirror, pillow, stuffed animal, assign that object a voice, and then talk to it. Oh, I love that. That's such a
Yeah,
great idea.
yeah, that sounds pretty useful.
Well, because then you have something, at least like a visual that's like really
Mhm. Yeah, for
concrete
sure.
that you can really react to. And Seacoast is saying, write down what you can from that conversation. Learning this has helped me not to verbalize the constant internal conversations. Very cool. I love that. That's a great tip, you guys. Forward Autumn, yep, 3 a.m. Sorry, guys. It's just a little bit easier on our end. I know it doesn't make your lives so simple. But anyway, we appreciate all of you tuning in whenever you can, and our streams are available after they are live. Okay, so we have tip number 4. Clara says to give your inner voice a name. Now, how did you come up with this? Because I never would have thought about doing this.
Um, it just sort of started with me being like, I can't just keep calling it inner voice. That's very vague. And eventually, the more I think about my inner voice, the more it becomes like a character in itself. And recently, I've named it Clark. Um, so it's just like Clark with the K, and that's because like the Instagram I made for the comics is like Clark with no K. Get it?
Love it.
So I just call it Clark because it's a mirror image of myself, but not really. It's me, but like meaner and more annoying. Um, yeah.
I just love that so much. Oh, Ray Mayo is saying that their inner voice is called Martha. How did you come up with Martha, Ray? I was just curious. That's really cool. And Juliana is saying, for me, it's Saturday nights. Okay, cool, guys. So let's take a look at how your inner voice gets visualized. Because I just assumed, because looking at your comics, that it was another version of you, the meaner, more obnoxious version. But you told me that sometimes it's actually a scribble. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, so it takes the entity of another me only when I understand what it's saying. Like for instance, when I want to do something nice for myself and it says, "No, you don't deserve it yet." I understand like its reasoning, but then sometimes the inner voice is just incoherent rambling that's just making me feel bad. And depending on how it makes me feel, I visualize it differently. So it's so funny. I just came up with this today. When it becomes like an more abstracted form, Clark becomes what I call the three S's, either a scribble, slime, or smoke.
I just love this. Yeah, because we actually were talking earlier about this movie Venom, which I have not seen because I don't have time to watch movies anymore with my 2 kids and everything. But talk to us about the slime and the parasitic creature, which is somewhat related to Venom. By the way, tell us if you've seen this movie. I've never seen it before.
I mean, just to clarify, like I know like Venom is actually a symbiote, so it's a symbiotic relationship. So this version, I'm not saying that it's like Venom, but it reminded me of Venom. So it's a bad version of Venom, a parasitic version where it's just slimy, heavy, annoying, and sucks the life out of you.
Awesome. I love that. And then you also mentioned the smoke. So we have this slide here to talk about pollution. How does your inner voice become pollution?
So smoke. When I say smoke, it reminds me of pollution just because, haze, which is very relevant today. And also it distorts everything. Like everything you look at becomes grayer, duller, you can't see clearly. So you don't really see the reality of things. It just like distorts how you see everything.
Yeah, so I think you guys can see that image wise, for your inner voice, anything is up for grabs, whether it's smoke or slime or a parasitic creature or multiple versions of yourself. Totally up to you guys. Let's see, Ray Mayo saying in the chat, Grand Martha is the head of the Eastern Star Sisterhood in my mother in law's name. She's highly critical. Whoa. You got to do this art, Dare Ray, because I want to see how you actually visualize that because that's so specific. I think that's fantastic. So we can't get out of here without me saying a little bit about my inner voice because when I was looking at your comics, Clar, I definitely started thinking about, well, hang on a second. What is my inner voice? And what does my inner voice do to me? And actually, I was thinking the other day, sometimes my inner voice is about being an artist, which is basically like, Clara, why have you not drawn anything for a whole month? I cannot believe you. You are not very dedicated. But then sometimes it's about really just silly, petty things. And I think that's when it annoys me the most is when I say to myself, why did you eat all those chocolate peanuts? Why did you have to eat 15? You could have just eaten two and gotten the same satisfaction. And then the other day I was thinking, Clara, you got to fit into those skinny pants again. Those skinny pants you used to wear when you were 20, they're sitting in your shelf and you're never going to wear them again because it's all downhill from here. So, my feeling about prompts, I don't know if I told you this, Clar, but my test drive of a good prompt is can I think of an idea within 2 minutes? What would be my response? So, there you go. I have this whole slew of ideas that I could definitely do for your prompt. Let's see. Cloudy Side is saying, wow, all these ways of visualizing the inner voice is so cool. Also, love you, Clar. Very cool. Let's
Oh
see.
my God.
Dionysus Doodles is here. Well, I hope you guys will think about doing the Art Prof Dare because we have so many cool prizes. We're giving out a free portfolio critique or an artist website critique or an artist Instagram critique. We also have art supplies that we give away for honorable mention. To submit to this art dare, you want to tag us on Instagram, use Art Prof Dare, or you can post on our Facebook page. Or if you don't have Facebook or Instagram, you can just email me and you can find all the information about the February art dare, including links and images to Clar's comics, different tutorials you guys can do as resources to back up your characters at artprof.org art dares. And just to tell you guys a little more about Clar, this is her main Instagram, but check out her stuff because what I think is super cool about this is Clar is actually going to help us judge this art dare. So she will be back at the end of the month when everybody has put in all of their entries and we're going to have her guest judge this art dare, which I'm super psyched about because we've never done that before. If you guys want to continue to grow as an artist, subscribe to our YouTube channel and ring the bell to make sure you don't miss out on anything. And thank you so much to our top Patreon supporters who make all of this possible, who keep us afloat. You guys make our days so much. You guys are so wonderful. And thank you to all of you who are watching right now. You guys make this such a wonderful community, and we'll see you next time. Bye.